Okay, friends, we're back and we're going to kind of go over installing the servos into a Prestige Pro fuselage, and the fuselage is different in the saddle area, as you can see right here. We no longer have the molded in rails for each individual servo. There's just a general recess, and it's intended for a 3D printed servo frame or servo mount. This guy's for KST X08s, HS08s, and probably A08s. These files are available on Samba's site or my site, so you can print them for whatever servos you want to use. The models, I think, generally do come with the frames printed for the MKS 6110 servos, but if you want to use different servos or just get the files and mess around with them and print your own or try to make your own, they're available, and I'll show you how to do that right now while I'm talking. So for mine, we're going to go with like I said, KSTs, and these are HS08s, and I printed up these frames, and they fit pretty good. I didn't design these frames; these were files I got from Samba. So, but the fit seems to be pretty good. So another one would go here, pointing the opposite direction. And if you notice these holes, see if I can point at them. There's a hole here and another one there, and I think those are the servo centers, right? So they're supposed to line up with the output shaft. This one, the one that's kind of raised, this servo, seems to be like maybe 1.5 millimeters off. But I noticed that this one here, this hole, is pretty accurate with the output shaft. So you can use those holes as a guide when it comes to trimming up the push rods. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut out this floor here so we can get this tray in place. So I got the opening in the fuse done, and now the tray fits in, and I just wanted to show you. So here are the servos. They're not bolted down, but I'm assuming that the elevated servo, this guy, goes forward, and you gotta really trim this up pretty clean. Like you can see, there's no real step there on these edges. Initially I left a little bit of a step, like maybe 2 millimeters, and the tray wouldn't fit all the way down. So when you open this up, you know, just get rid of all the material and try to have flush walls all the way around. You should be just fine. So that's done, and the next thing I'm going to do is mark the locations for making the cuts in the push rods. And for that, I'm going to, you could use these holes, but I'm just going to kind of double check and use a silver Sharpie and see where things line up. So I've marked with the silver Sharpie the center of the output shafts, and that hole is pretty accurate. And this guy is just a little bit off. You could still use the holes, you know, you have adjustment in the threads with the couplers, so you'd be just fine if you just use the holes as a indication of where to mark. So I'm going to push this guy back in. Gotta make sure you don't get your wire stuck. Okay, and then you can see where I've where I have the marks, I'm just going to transfer that to the fuselage. Like this. Just like that. And now I have to put the tails on and tape up the control surfaces centered. And then we can cut the carbon and get to installing the clevises and couplers. The elevator's on and taped in center, and the rudder push rod in the back doesn't have the ball link glued on. Normally with the older Prestige models, the ball link was attached, and this is not attached. So since it's not attached, what I'm going to do is glue the ball link on last. That'll allow me to install the clevis and the coupler on the rudder push rod without really worrying about where the center is. I can actually just pull the push rod out and attach it here and do the cutting and the measuring at the tail, which for me seems easier, so I'm going to do that. But the elevator has to be done kind of up front here. But I may actually pull the elevator out too, but we have to mark it here. So what I'm going to do is just use my mark on the fuselage, and I'm going to kind of move this push rod up a little bit. We're gonna get it somewhat close. Let me see if I can get it better. I don't want to move the elevator, or I want to disturb the elevator. And let's see if we can just get a mark on this. Perfect. That'll work. So what I'm going to do now is see if I can get that elevator push rod to come out a little bit. Okay, I'm kind of rethinking the elevator thing. I'm not going to try to pull the push rod all the way out. The opening is big enough to work with. So let me just move. I just move the elevator to a safer position. And I got some cutters here, and we have our mark. And I'm just going to cut ahead of that mark with the cutters, just to get rid of that. And now we should be able to pull this guy up and out. Like this. I don't know if you can see the silver mark right there, but now that's not where we want to cut, because that silver mark is the pivot point for the clevis. So we have to measure another mark. Got some hemostats here, or whatever you want to call these. So we have to measure another mark for the length of the clevis and the coupler. And what I like to do is just see kind of how deep this carbon goes into the coupler. And I can just put my fingernail by it. Okay, so I got a little better idea of how that works. So now what I want to do is just hold. I want to line up the pin of the clevis to our original mark. I know it's hard for you to see. And then I'm going to make another mark on the push rod where I want to cut it. So now we have 2 marks. So let's see if you can see. See, there's 2 marks on that push rod, and we want to cut it at that second mark there. So let's see if we can get that done. All right. You can see the end there. And what I'm going to do is grab a file, and I'm just going to clean off the end of the push rod. Because there's a little bit of fraying and stuff like that, so I'm just going to kind of put a slight point on the end of the push rod. Just clean it up a little bit, and then I'm going to use the corner of the files and file some notches into there, just a couple, maybe 3. To give the resin a little more to bite onto. I got some coarse sandpaper here, and I'm going to grab this push rod and just scuff it up. Try to get some of that shine off it, put some scratches on it. And we'll want to clean that off with some alcohol. Let me put some things away here so we don't smash our model parts. I'll zoom out a little bit. And so what I'm going to do now is put the horizontal back on. Okay, the elevator's back on, and again the moving part is taped up, so it's not going to move. And I'm just going to grab one of our clevises, and all I want to do is just slip it over the push rod and see where it lines up. See if we're you know, under the mark that we made, and make sure it's basically all the way bottomed out. And I would say we're pretty close. I could probably shorten that push rod by about maybe 2 millimeters. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Might as well get it as close as we can, so that we don't have to adjust too much stuff. Just gonna grab this and we'll just sand the end of it with the file, or file the end of it, whatever you want to call it. Okay, and again, we're gonna wipe that off with some rubbing alcohol. Do that a little later when we prep the rudder push rod. So let's do the rudder push rod now, which is gonna be much easier. I'm just gonna pull it out the front so we have great access to it. Again, some sandpaper. Probably zoom in a little bit. And just gonna scuff this a little bit with the sandpaper. That, and then I'm gonna do the notch thing again with the edge of the file. Then we'll wipe that off. So let's get a piece of paper towel, some rubbing alcohol. Wipe that off, and we'll also do the elevator pushrod. Wipe that guy off. Perfect. So now I'm going to do some prep work on the couplers. You've probably seen me do this a bunch before. I'm going to take the clevises off. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to file, or not file, but I'm going to use my rotary tool, and I'm going to put a slot in these. And we'll do a little bit of work on the ends. I'm gonna basically taper the ends. So we got there, and one last thing is I'm going to put a notch. This is probably all completely overkill, but I'm just going to put a notch in the end. All I'm trying to do is get more area for some mechanical adhesion. And then we can take X-Acto or something and can just open the slot up, get some of the debris out of there. Like that. And then I'm gonna get one of these, this is a 1.5 millimeter bit, like a routing bit, cutting bit. I'm just going to run this through the end of the coupler. Just trying to put some scratches on the inside of it. And clean it up a little bit. And that's basically it. We're basically ready to bond these guys. Let's get these couplers installed. I got some JB weld here, so we're just gonna mix this up. Good old JB weld, which is just epoxy, two-part epoxy with some kind of metal filling. It works great for this. You can use epoxy. You could even use CA. I know the Samba guys use CA, so you know they can build the model quick. But I don't know. I'm not in a rush, so I don't mind waiting for something a little stronger to set up, but we'll make sure this is mixed up really good. And then I'm going to grab a coupler, and I'm just going to run this in a little bit, try to force some in there. Okay. Do the next one. I hope it's gonna fall. Oh well. Same thing. All right, and then we want to put some on the push rods. So the rudder is going to be very easy because it's fully exposed. So we'll just run some around there. And then the elevator is going to be a little more tricky, but we'll grab our hemostats and we'll just run some around here. Again, the moving part of the horizontal stab is taped and fixed in the center position. So we'll grab a coupler and we'll put it on, and we just got to make sure it's completely bottomed out. This is where 2 hemostats would be appropriate, but I'll use these cutters. And I'm just gonna push on this coupler till it's bottomed out. Okay, and then I'm gonna take my little carbon stick and I'm just gonna clean up the back of this and make sure that the JB weld kind of overlaps onto the coupler. So I'm pretty happy with that, and I'll show you a trick for that in a minute. So we make sure we don't glue it to the side of the fuselage, and the rudder one will be very easy. Just push it on. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a scrap piece of plastic baggie and let's see what we got. So just got some whatever kind of plastic I had laying around, and I'm just going to try to get this in behind the coupler. Good enough, and that'll just keep it off the side of the fuselage. The JB weld will touch the plastic, but it won't stick, so it's no big deal. So, all we got to do now is set this aside and let it fully cure. While we wait for that JB weld to cure, I'm going to prep the rudder ball link. And the first thing I'm going to do is use, this is I think it's a 1/2 millimeter, like a router bit. I'm going to use this to actually drill a hole through the ball link, and this will allow me to run a wire through the ball link to snap it off, basically. So if you can imagine this on the rudder, you can push a ball link in and pivot a wire into the ball link and pivot it, and it'll help to undo the ball link. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it at the base of the ball. Let's see if you can see that. See that hole right there? And then I'm going to run another hole through. Now that hole doesn't actually penetrate the channel in here where the carbon push rod gets glued. So I'm gonna do the same thing, lower. I'm not going to drill all the way through. This is just for kind of a glue bond, adhesive bond or glue bond, and I'm also going to scuff up the inside with this bit. So I kind of have like a half hole not drilled all the way through in the end. And one final thing I like to do is get the cutoff wheel on your Dremel or rotary tool. I'm going to kind of taper the back of the ball link. I'm going to get some sandpaper and kind of scuff it. Again, all these are just me being overly precautious and trying to get basically like the best adhesion I can get with this. We're basically just going to be using super glue to attach this. That should be good. Yep. Okay, so that's prepped, basically ready to glue. And once our JB weld dries, we can trim the push rod and attach this. So the JB weld is dry on the push rods. That's great. I have put the screws in the servo, so these are attached. And what I'm going to do now is work on the horn. So I'm going to set up the rudder and elevator servo arms. I'm going to use this guy for the rudder, and I'm going to use the second hole here. The rudder servo arm really should be as short as possible. So this, if I put this ruler on here, this is about, it's going to be about 7 millimeters. So I mean, I probably could even go shorter than that, but I think I can't use this one because it's just too close. So we're kind of stuck with this. I have a 16th inch drill in my pin vise, and I'm just gonna drill out that hole. Now let's see what the fit is with the clevis. Okay, working pretty good. So I'm gonna have to trim off the other arms here, obviously, and I'm going to kind of grind the back of the clevis down a little bit, just so I can get more travel there without it binding. So let me do that, and then for the elevator, I think I'm going to use this guy, the single servo arm, and I'm going to use the third hole, which is, that's 10 millimeters, because the elevator horn on the actual surface is very long, so I think that'll be fine. So let me drill out that one too with the pin vise. Okay. And then I'll use the rotary tool or Dremel and clean those up a little bit. So the rudder clevis has been ground down a little bit. You can see that there. And I have the horns on the servos, and they're centered. I used the KST programming tool to get these centered up nicely. Here's the rudder arm and the elevator right there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get these servo arms on our controls. The rudder will be easy because we can just pull out the entire push rod like that, and we'll just screw this guy on and we'll center it up. Something like that, giving us leeway on both sides of the clevis there, so we can get some adjustment later if we need to. So we'll push that guy back in like that, and then the elevator is going to be a little trickier. But I think I'll be able to get it. Alright, and again we'll leave that so we have adjustment on both sides. Something like that, and now let's see here. Let's see if we can hook up these clevises. Oh, I'm wondering if it would be easier to... It might be easier to actually take the arm off the servo and, you know, hook it up to the push rod first. So that's centered there. Let's see if we can do that. You know, it's still tricky, but I would imagine it's easier than the original Prestige, because that thing was really tricky to hook up the servos to the push rods. Let's get these hemostats going like this. There we go. So that guy's like that. Hoping this works. And then let's do the rudder. Try not to lose the screws. Okay, now let's see here. That's the way this goes. Probably see if we can get the elevator first. Yep, that worked out okay. So I think that's the method. I still got to do the rudder servo, obviously, but let's get the screw back in the arm. I have pretty good access to it. Alright, and I think before I fully kind of button this up, I want to kind of get the wires started down towards the receiver bay. I don't want to make that too difficult to fish out later. Okay, and then let's see if we can get the rudder attached. I don't really know what the order of operations should be because this is the first time I've done this. My original Pro was already set up from Samba, so I didn't have to do this. Tricky, tricky. Okay, I need to ditch the hemostats now. I think if I can get the tip of the... Yes, and then I gotta get that somewhat square. It's not square right now. This is tricky. So I got the arm on the servo, but it's not in the right orientation. So if I would have got that right on the first shot, would have gone a little easier. So really need to grow a third hand. Okay, now the trick is to get the screwdriver through the hole and then get it near the servo in kind of the right orientation. Oh my gosh. Maybe this would have been easier if I did the rudder servo first instead of the elevator, but I'm not sure. Okay, see, this is where I need the third pair of hands, because now I need to basically push the arm. There we go. Woo! Okay, let's get that screw in there. All right. Now I gotta find, gotta find 4 screws. It doesn't come with screws for this. I think that's a bit of a fail on Samba's part. And then I gotta make sure that the servos are centered again, so I gotta plug them into this to the tester. Oh, but I gotta open up this opening here too, so maybe I'll do that first. So the rudder pushrod is centered, the servo centered. And what I did is I just took a silver Sharpie and I put a mark directly over the ball link in the rudder. And that's really all you have to do. Make sure the rudder's centered, taped up and centered. And then this should be a fairly straightforward task. We'll remove the rudder. And now we have a good amount to work with here. See? Right there. Maybe it'll be easier to see if I put this piece of white paper there. So now it's just a matter of basically getting your ball link and kind of positioning it where the actual ball is lined up with the mark you made, and then just cutting it, make another mark and just cut it, you know, how you need to. And then you can go ahead and glue it on. I've made the final cut, and I've also filed the notches and sanded the carbon push rod like I did on the other end, and cleaned that off with some rubbing alcohol. So that's ready to go. And I've snapped the ball link onto the rudder here. So the plan is to just use CA for this, medium CA. And I'm thinking I can kind of pre-position this kind of like this, and then I can get the CA on the push rod there and slide everything together. So let's give that a shot. We kind of got to do this in one go. So yeah, gotta be careful. Okay, so just make sure this is kind of where I want it. I think a little bit up would be ideal. So I'm gonna get some CA on this. I'm going to push that in, kind of guide the ball link in, and we're in there, pushing it firm, and then I'm just going to get the rudder kind of centered. Put some tape on it. Yep, that looks pretty good. Let me zoom out. So that looks pretty straight. And I'm gonna get a bit of scrap carbon. There's a little bit of CA kind of coming out, and I'm just gonna, it's on the bottom side, and I'm just gonna kind of roll that back over to the top side. And then I got some accelerator here, and we'll just give that a spritz. And I'm gonna let this sit. I know it's super glue, it's CA, but I'm gonna let it sit for like 30 minutes just to make sure it's 100%. All right, so I cut out the hole back here in the fuselage so I can get the wires through. The wire harnesses in place. I still have to glue it. I go over all this in previous videos about assembling the Prestige. And I've cut or made holes for my antenna exits. I run JR, so unfortunately I have to make rather large holes. You can see there for these Boda style antennas. Yeah, so that's all good, and I did something a little different here. I ground little channels in the top of the fuselage for the antennas, and then put my holes here. So you can see the antennas are flush or below this surface. And I might put a bit of black tape on here when everything is all done, but this just lets me kind of work with the receiver easier. I can easily just pivot it up and down and get the wires in, where previously when I had the antennas coming in on this inner wall, like lower, it was always a bit of a pain to get everything in place. So I think this will work out really well. And then I have made a power cable or lead. This is a 3-pins Dean's connector with a regular servo end on it, and basically this will just go, you know, from the front to the receiver here, and then there'll be the side of the Dean's here with connection to the Altus, and then the Altus to the speed control, blah blah blah. And the 3 pins just lets me, you know, attach and detach the wires easily when I want to take the nose off. Dean's connectors are designed to be assembled multiple times versus these servo leads. You really don't want to be pulling them in and out a lot because they're not designed for that. All right, that's really all I got left, so just a few more minutes of work and this will all be buttoned up. Okay, all finished up with the Prestige Pro boom. You can see the servos are installed with those screws I found. Again, when selecting screws, make sure that the heads don't protrude past the wing saddle, or else you'll get a dented wing. I did cut the opening here as you normally would do for the receiver wires. Got my receiver in here. Little tiny piece of double-sided tape to hold that. Wires are routed this way, so I cut little channels into the edge of the boom there, and then the holes just past, and you can see that those are flush, so nothing will get crimped there. And then the holes for my antennas, so I have one kind of on the upper side here, and then one more towards the lower side on this guy. And when you drill these holes, make sure you do not hit the push rods, very important. Connectors glued in as we would normally do that. If you want more detail on how to put the connector in or cut the hole out here or mount your receiver, I have another video on doing the old Prestige boom. It's similar. And then up front here I have, this is the lead with the 3 pins Dean's connector. So this plugs into the throttle channel on the receiver, and this is connected to the altitude device and speed control. And that's about it. So that's how to do the new Pro X-Tail boom. The V-Tail Pro boom is the same as the old, so there's nothing different there. Hope you guys found this video helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.